Ray Fittipaldo joining us now. He is our Steelers insider from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and he's brought to us by the Western PA injury attorneys of LGKG, serving as your home team for over 90 years, lgkg.com. Good morning to you, Ray. How you doing, buddy?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good? We
Not
good?
bad.
Think we're having a nice day? Dorin brought breakfast in this morning. It's really perked things up for me, Ray.
Donuts? What? Bagels?
Breakfast sandwiches.
Some hash browns.
Hash browns, yeah.
And then he even gave me my choice between orange juice or apple. What would you have chosen, Ray?
Oh, definitely orange juice.
I went with the orange. Although I think actually you got to choose.
Yeah, I got to choose ultimately. I was like, which one do you want? You're like, oh, you're awesome. And I handed you the orange because I wanted the apple.
Whichever one you would have handed me would have been the right decision. I love both juices equally. All right, Ray. So Aaron Curry, linebacker coach now for the Jets, no longer with the Steelers, and Grady Brown, no longer the Steelers defensive backs coach. We can view both guys as a collective. We can view them separately. What's your understanding of what happened here? Did these guys leave under their own volition, or were the Steelers just saying, you know what, go on with your work someplace else?
Yeah, Grady's contract was not renewed, and I believe the same thing took place with Aaron Curry. And, if you read the tea leaves, guys, what were the main issues with that Steelers defense down the stretch? And I know the run defense was terrible in that Baltimore game, but to me, that 5-game losing streak was defined by blown coverages and miscommunication. And it was at the second and third levels of that defense. So, we'll see what Mike has to say about that when he's asked, in a couple of months at the owners' meetings. But just, looking at where they struggled this year, even though Grady was getting some DC interviews, I think he interviewed with the Falcons. For whatever reason, it just wasn't meshing this year. The communication, all that stuff. So I think he was probably scapegoated for that regard.
Pat Meyer is going to be retained. He will continue to be the offensive line coach. Does that shock you? Did you expect that? Is that the right move, Ray, for the Steelers?
Yeah, well, they haven't. I mean, Dorin, these moves are trickling out. So we're assuming Pat Meyer is going to be back. He does have a year left on his contract. So we'll see how that goes. To me, I wrote about the offensive line in Sunday's paper. And to me, when I look at it, I think Broderick Jones is the linchpin, the future success for that line. He was the first foundational piece that they put in place. He hasn't played to his draft slot. So to me, they got to get him playing at a top level for that to work out. Can you blame Pat Meyer for what's gone on the last two seasons? Maybe a little bit, but I think it's eventually on the player. Broderick will be back on the left side presumably this year. That's his natural spot. So, I think Pat is probably safe, but we'll see if anything else trickles out here before the combine.
It's a hard thing to evaluate because obviously you've got a couple of guys who have played well in Zach Frazier and then McCormick on the right side, but a couple of guys who haven't played up to par. So you don't really know how much work did he do with those two interior guys, how much is he to blame for Broderick Jones. All right, flipping over to the sexy stuff here, Ray, not in the trenches, but just thinking about the Deebo Samuel rumors out there. How interested do you believe the Steelers are in him?
I would think there would be some interest, but I don't think they're going to give up a lot to get him at him. He's missed some games here in recent years. There's been a little bit of drama with him out in San Francisco, and San Francisco's on the hook for a big contract there. So eventually, if they don't get any trade offers, they're going to have to release him, and then any team, including the Steelers, could get him for no compensation, and they just have to negotiate a deal with him. So, I think, if you give up anything, it would be 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, something like that. But, Cooper Kupp, same deal. I think eventually, guys, if there's no takers, these guys are going to be released, and you might be able to get them for nothing, actually.
Do you think Deebo would be a good fit? Like, do you think that if they were to acquire him, do you think that it would make a lot of sense and he would do well in Arthur Smith's offense?
I do. I think he's a willing blocker. That's something that, this offense requires. Van Jefferson played. How many snaps did that guy play? Just basically because he was a willing blocker. So, Debo would fit that role, much more explosive than Van Jefferson at this point in his career. You acquire a guy on either with 1 year left on his contract, or you get him on your own contract at his age. What is he, 28, 29? Do you worry about a guy coming in and, meshing with, Pickens if you keep him and the other guys? I worry a little bit about that. But, just based on what I know from him, in San Francisco, I think schematically, yes, he would be a good fit.
Ray, the Eagles dominated the Kansas City Chiefs in a bunch of different categories, but especially up front on that defensive line. I know you've been saying for a while you think they could be going D-line in round one. Does that kind of cement it for you, that that's the direction they're going to go in?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've thought all along. I know they drafted Keanu Benton a couple years ago in the second round, but other than that, they've been trying to get away with it by, drafting guys in the middle rounds, and they just really haven't found, a guy who could step in and be a starter. And this draft is littered with starting caliber players. If you look at some of these top 50 lists and mock drafts, and I'm actually watching a lot of these guys right now, there's guys who can step in and help right away. Whether you do it in the first round, second round, I definitely think the first 2 days they're going to get a starter. And I wouldn't be surprised, guys, just because Cam Hayward played well this year, you do have to think about the future. So you got to get a 5 technique for the future, and you got to get a 3 technique to replace Larry Ogunjobi. So do not be surprised at all if they take like 2 in the first 4, 2 in the first 5 rounds, just because they have that need both for the present and for the future.
Ray, would you be okay with this scenario? And it's a hypothetical. The Steelers, they trade for Debo Samuel. They keep George Pickens. They draft Ibuka. But that also meant that they re-signed Najee Harris, and he was your running back of 2025. Would you take that?
Like potential, like with talent, that would be pretty good. But what kind of drama would come along with that? I mean, if you re-sign Najee, there's no drama. That guy's a workhorse. I think he's good for the locker room, that whole thing. But when you keep Pickens, I mean, basically what your scenario suggests is they're surrounding Pickens with better players. He's getting open more. He's more productive, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're taking a shot there that maybe you're trying to create the perfect situation to get the most out of George. I kind of like it, but there's also, a lot of unknowns with that as well. And, with George, you kind of want to either move on or you kind of want to just get some clarity there. And I'm not sure which direction the Steelers are going to go yet. I guess we'll find out in 2 weeks. Omar's going to be talking at the Combine. That's going to be I'm sure, a big topic out there.
Ray, you wrote in your chat, I think a big part of it is that many of the players don't believe or fully buy into their offensive and defensive systems. Until that changes, you're not going to see anyone on that team playing with swagger. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think if you look at the offense late in the season, there was a lot, I don't want to say dissension, but a lot of people thought that, the passing game could be a bigger, part of the offense. I wrote about that. And then when you look at the defense, guys freelancing, guys not being in their gaps, call that whatever you want. To me, it's buy-in. You got to do your job. And, late in the season, both Ravens games, they weren't doing that. Was some of it they were just dominated at the line of scrimmage? Yeah, there was a little bit of that too. But you constantly heard guys not being in their gaps, guys not lining up right. I remember Deshaun Elliott talking after the Chiefs game. Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward talking about that very thing, lack of cohesion. Why aren't we getting this right? So, yeah, well, however you want to frame it, buy in, whatever, they got to start getting on the same page on both offense and defense. And I understand that's going to be part of it when you end the game on a 5-game losing streak, but they got to get that rectified in the offseason, and they got to get better cohesion as a team overall. That's for sure.
Ray, appreciate the time. As always, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, guys. See you.
Thanks,
See you,
Ray.
buddy.